The most powerful crime syndicate in history. That is what we are living under now in the United States of America, according to Donald Trump's hometown newspaper. That is the single most important fact of life in America, and it is the force that must be overcome if the United States of America is to have a future as a democracy. The United States Constitution, which is the first law of the land, was written by men and only men who believed it would then be entrusted forever to men and only men just like them. They saw themselves, despite many of them being slave owners, as honorable men, gentlemen, people who this country and the world could trust to do the right thing. They did not try to write a constitution in anticipation of criminals holding constitutional offices. They did not write a constitution strong enough to withstand criminal intent on the part of presidents and political parties in Congress. But that Constitution is now the only shield we have against the most powerful criminal syndicate in history. That's the way Donald Trump's hometown newspaper describes his current operations. Quote, the most powerful crime syndicate in history. The crime syndicate lost one today when Donald Trump was forced by a federal judge to deliver $127 million in overdue funding from the federal government for the New York-New Jersey Gateway Tunnel project, the new and very necessary tunnel under the Hudson River, strengthening the Northeast Corridor, the most important transportation corridor in the United States historically and in today's economy. Harvard University continues to defeat the crime syndicate in court, much to Donald Trump's expressed irritation today.
For Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Diller, how are you doing? How are you doing with Harvard? How are you doing with Harvard? You know, Harvard's extremely discriminatory, unfortunately, and it's working good. Harmeet is on their trail, right? Good. You keep suing them. The hell with them.
The yes, sir people in that room, who are oh so comfortable, are showing just how comfortable they would all be saying yes, sir, to any dictator. Donald Trump and his clownish lawyers will continue to be crushed in court by the 390-year-old Harvard University, which will live long after Donald Trump and his courtroom flunkies are long gone. John Adams and other Harvard graduates were there at the birth of this country, designing the Massachusetts Constitution, which became a model for the United States Constitution, which Harvard University now uses to defeat the crime syndicate consistently. The New York Daily News, which now calls the Trump administration the most powerful crime syndicate in history, has always had strong reader support in the Queens neighborhood in New York, where Donald Trump grew up. The New York Daily News says, quote, it is time to acknowledge what has become tragically obvious. The Trump administration is essentially acting as a massive criminal enterprise. It lies, steals, extorts, and murders, all while cloaked in the awesome authority of the state. It is on a crime spree that puts Al Capone to shame. This administration has murdered Renee Good and Alex Preddy, slandered them as domestic terrorists and assassins, and allowed their killers to walk free. Unleashed thousands of minimally trained ICE agents recruited with explicitly white supremacist messaging to inflict terror on people of color. Repeatedly violated the constitutional rights of citizens and non-citizens by arresting them for First Amendment protected speech, raiding their homes without judicial warrants and imprisoning them without due process, and killed dozens of civilians on the high seas solely on the unsubstantiated claim that they were drug runners, not that being drug runners would justify their summary executions without due process anyway. Released hundreds of imprisoned felons who brutally beat Capitol Police officers on January 6th. converted the once independent Department of Justice into an instrument of personal retribution via the prosecution of cooked-up lawsuits against the president's enemies, threatened to seize the territory of a sovereign nation, a NATO ally no less, and declared that legislators should be executed for reminding military personnel of their duty to disobey illegal orders. It is difficult to comprehend the level of state-sponsored criminality we are witnessing because our country has never experienced anything like it. And the Daily News did not even include in its description of the most powerful crime syndicate in history all of Donald Trump's violations of the Emoluments Clause to enrich himself, including accepting the gift of a 747 aircraft from the Middle Eastern dictatorship of Qatar. And the billions of dollars Donald Trump is making in cryptocurrency ventures and other rackets that he is running during his presidency. Donald Trump knows that all of that apparent corruption could be effectively investigated by congressional committees if, and only if, Democrats win the House of Representatives this year or win the Senate this year. And to prevent that, Donald Trump has not come up with a new campaign message for Republicans. He has not come up with a new economic policy. He has not reversed his economically crushing illegal and unconstitutional tariffs. Instead, he has seized the voting records of Atlanta voters in Fulton County, Georgia, to set the precedent that he can send the FBI anywhere he wants to seize any voting records, including ballots, at any time. Donald Trump is the first president in history who wants to take the administration of elections away from states and, in effect, count all American ballots cast in every election inside the Trump White House. Donald Trump publicly appears to be planning an election crime spree even worse than the conspiracy he was indicted for running to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. And that is the most important story of this year. Will Donald Trump commit election crimes all over the country to try to crush democracy? That is not an alarmist question. That is the question of the year. Will Donald Trump commit election crimes all over the country to try to crush democracy? As of tonight, the most powerful force we have in this country to defeat the most powerful crime syndicate in history remains the voters of the United States of America, who are turning against Donald Trump in numbers large enough to defeat any criminal intent Donald Trump might bring to the elections in November. And nothing has separated voters from Donald Trump more effectively than the perception that Donald Trump is covering up for his old friend Jeffrey Epstein and himself by spending the year refusing to release the Epstein files and then making sure that 3 million pages of the Epstein files have not been released as they were required to be released by law. A clear majority of Americans, 53%, now believe Donald Trump is trying to cover up his friend Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. Republicans who control the House Oversight Committee were forced by the Democrats on the committee, with some cooperation by Republicans, to investigate the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. But most Republicans on the committee have also tried to help Donald Trump in whatever way they can. And one way they decided they could help Donald Trump is by sending a subpoena to a wife of a president who never met Jeffrey Epstein. There is only one first lady in American history who we know met Jeffrey Epstein, and that is Donald Trump's third and current wife. Why did the Republicans on the committee seek to subpoena Hillary Clinton, who says she never met Jeffrey Epstein, and not subpoena Melania Trump? The first question under oath the committee should ask to Melania Trump is, who introduced you to Jeffrey Epstein? Did Donald Trump introduce you to Jeffrey Epstein, or did Jeffrey Epstein introduce you to Donald Trump? The committee will never ask those questions of Melania Trump. And Hillary Clinton believes she has been subpoenaed as a distraction that the Republicans hope will somehow help Donald Trump. And that Hillary Clinton's subpoena is just another indication that Donald Trump really, really does have something to hide.
There's something about this administration's attitude toward this, which I think really leads us to conclude they have something to hide. We don't. We have been willing to say whatever we know. We've even done it under oath. But they want us to testify, not everyone else who's mentioned many, many times, hundreds of thousands of times in these files. So we've said, fine, let us do it in public. And we will appear in public and we'll answer all your questions.
And of course, the Republican chairman of the committee does not want Bill and Hillary Clinton's testimony to be given publicly because Republicans are afraid that that testimony might not produce anything that they really want.
Why did they want to pull us into this? To divert attention from President Trump. This is not complicated. This is so obvious, and they keep trying to divert. Look at this shiny object. We're going to have the Clintons, even Hillary Clinton, who never met the guy. We're going to have her there.
In that BBC interview, Hillary Clinton said something that Donald Trump has never, ever said. Get the files out.
We have called for the full release of these files repeatedly. We think sunlight is the best disinfectant. Get the files out.
And Hillary Clinton has this prediction about Republican reaction and Donald Trump's reaction to her testimony.
If I have to do it behind closed doors, they're not going to like what I have to say because I have very strong opinions about what it is they're hiding and who they are protecting.